Welcome to Game Changers with Molly Fletcher, where we take you behind the scenes with peak performers to learn what makes them tick and discover how you can apply their lessons to your life. I'm your host, Molly Fletcher. Shabnam Mogharabi is the CEO of SoulPancake, an award-winning entertainment company she co-founded with actor Rainn Wilson, better known as Dwight from The Office, that explores life's biggest questions. SoulPancake spreads joy and celebrates the human experience by producing and curating thought-provoking, uplifting video content. Their tagline is simple: we make stuff that matters. You've probably watched some of their viral hits like Kid President or the series My Last Days. Shabnam is also a New York Times bestselling author of SoulPancake, Chew on Life's Biggest Questions. On today's episode, we talk about how to craft a great story, being intentional about tuning into joy in our daily lives, and the power of tackling tough conversations. Let's get right into it. Here's my conversation with Shabnam Mogharabi. Shabnam, it is so awesome to have you on. Thank you so much for taking time. Tell me a little bit about the story of SoulPancake for some who may not know it, and what was sort of the inspiration?
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be chatting with you. SoulPancake is, I joke that it's my professional soulmate. So we started the company 8 years ago. It was founded by Rainn Wilson, the actor who played Dwight Schrute on The Office. And essentially, when he was getting well known for this weird character, he kind of looked around online and said, I want to make something that's going to be really positive because in his words, there was a lot of crap out there on the internet. So he really wanted to make something positive and uplifting, a place where people could kind of explore life's big questions and what it is that makes us human. And so SoulPancake was really born out of that idea, to give people a space where they could connect with other humans and have real, meaningful, deep conversations, but to do it in a way that was entertaining and uplifting and not cheesy or hippy-dippy, and really kind of engage with people in that way. And so when the company was launched, it was with that intention. And over the years, how we've communicated with our audience has changed, but the mission has always stayed in that space. And so now today, we have pivoted the company to being a video content company. And so we create daily original video content for a social audience. We have about 10 million fans there, have gotten more than 1 billion video views on that content.
Wow.
We do content in the television space, creating series and specials for networks like MTV, the CW, the Oprah Winfrey Network. And then we also do a lot of branded engagement. So we'll work with brands to help them create video content that better tells their stories, that's really emotive and connective. And have worked with a ton of different brands like Visa, Coca-Cola, Purina, Panera, T-Mobile, just a ton of different brands.
You guys aren't playing around over there.
Yeah, we like to tell good stories. And then we recently got into the event space. So we've just started doing some live events and pop-up events. Just did an event in May that was sold out in Los Angeles. So really trying to take the kind of those online connections that we've been sparking and engaging and bringing it into the real world so you can look at another human and connect to them.
For sure. So I got to rewind for 1 second. Tell me this. Why SoulPancake? Why is it called SoulPancake? I'm trying to get my head around that real quick.
The story of that is actually really funny. It's kind of silly. So when we were coming up with the company, the tagline was "Chew on Life's Big Questions," and we really liked that tagline. And so we wanted a name that was a combination of a food item and something kind of a bigger, profound word. So we had a bunch of combinations like SoulPancake, metaphysical milkshake, karma waffle, spirit taco, a bunch of like combinations of kind of big, profound words and food items. And then no one could spell metaphysical, so that was out. And then a couple of the others, actually, the domains were already taken. I think spirittaco.com is like a food truck in Austin or something.
Okay.
So the domains were already taken. So the one that was left that everyone could spell, but that also had a domain available was SoulPancake. And so that's how we ended up with the name.
Well, and you guys tell real stories. I mean, these are really powerful. You're not playing around, right? I mean, you're digging deep. Tell me, how do you choose the stories to tell?
Yeah, so we don't shy away from tackling any topic. I think the beauty of being a human is that life is really messy and it has all sorts of components to it, and we want to tackle all of those, but we always want to tackle them in a way that is uplifting and inspiring. And so that's the lens that we bring to everything. So we've covered everything from religion to gender issues to death and dying to race to identity to bias to, I mean, we've really covered kind of the gamut of tougher topics. But we always do it, with a lens of trying to find the uplifting and inspiring story. And most of that is really driven through people. So we spend a lot of time finding people whose stories are compelling, people who are relatable and that you're watching and can feel connected to. And it's through people and through really kind of impeccable casting that we're able to tell the kinds of stories that we want, and the kinds of content that we want to create.
And so, we have so many leaders that listen. How do leaders use stories to better convey, their message and to better connect with the people they want to serve?
Well, so at SoulPancake, we really think about what do human beings crave? What do we just intrinsically, biologically, on a fundamental level crave and are drawn to? And I think there's really three things. I think we're drawn to connection,
Sure.
fundamentally. Like we are all wanting to connect with other people, whether that is romantically, whether that is through friendship, whether that is through family. Connection is a huge driver, and we seek it out. We are driven to connect to other people. I think that's why social media has become this kind of addictive thing for us, is that because we're craving connection in such real and meaningful ways. I think the second thing that we are naturally drawn to is stories. I mean, we've been chiseling on cave walls since we could. We are drawn to stories, telling stories. It's how we relate to other people. It's what drives us to connect, right? How do we connect with people? As we tell stories about our lives, about their lives, and we're connected through storytelling. So storytelling is a huge fundamental driver of kind of the human condition. And the last thing is that we're frankly drawn to leaders. Human beings want to be led. We want to see leaders who inspire us, who move us, who can motivate us. We are drawn to leaders naturally. And so I think those things, connection, storytelling, and leadership, are kind of the pillars that SoulPancake looks to in creating its content. And I think it's really a lesson for all folks who find themselves in a position of leadership. If people are naturally drawn to you and they are naturally looking to you to inspire them, to lead them, to navigate the future, then the way you do that is you use stories to connect with the people that you lead, right? And that's why storytelling is important, because it's a bridge to connection. And the best leaders know how to connect with people on a really human and fundamental level, because that's how you get them to then buy into you as a leader.
Along those lines, how are there things that always live inside of a great story, right? I mean, is there something, I'm sure, in your background and in the work that you do now, is there some certain elements that when we think about that as a leader or as a business owner or as an emerging leader, right? What are the components that make a story great? Beyond the obvious, right? I mean, we know they have to be authentic. We know, you know what I mean?
Right. There's actually this great article that was written. It's called like the 22 Rules of Storytelling from Pixar.
Okay.
You can Google it. You can find it anywhere. But it's this great compilation of these rules of storytelling from what I think is one of the best storytelling companies in the world, which is Pixar. And they have some really very basic things in that list, but they also got some really profound things. And among the basic lists are things like you've got to have a beginning, middle, and end, right? Like every good story has a beginning beginning, middle, and end. So whatever you're communicating, whether that's a new strategy you're unrolling, whether that's a new direction that the company is taking, you have to make sure your story has a beginning, middle, and end, right? You have to make sure that you're setting up, what is the world we're living in? What is the setting that this story is taking place in? What is the pressures and the challenges on ourselves as a company? What is the middle, right? Where are we now? What are the things that are ahead of us, and that the reasons why we're needing to shift strategy or introduce this new product line or whatever the case may be. And then finally, like, what does that mean for the future, right? Like, what's the big thing that this will revolutionize, not only for our company, but for the world as large? I think if you look at how Steve Jobs always unveiled new initiatives at Apple, he was always telling a story. He was always telling a story about how this technology was going to revolutionize the world, but he did it through the lens of like, where are we now? Where are we going? And how are we going to get there? And so the beginning, middle, and end of a story is very, very important. And I also frankly think you have to have really compelling characters, right? And I think that's where oftentimes I think the best leaders will find one individual at a company, one employee, one customer, one company that they partner with, whose story they can tell as to the impact that they are making as a company, as a leader, as employees, because that one story can oftentimes resonate in a more personal level. You can talk all you want about, oh, we sold 10 million widgets last year, but after a certain number and after a certain point, the human brain has a hard time processing that. But if you can tell the story of one person who the widget changed their life, suddenly as an employee, as a stakeholder, you are much more invested. You are much more able to relate to that. And you feel a sense of ownership because you can visualize the character, the person, the individual, the one company that was affected by the work that you're doing. So there's something really profound in making sure you hone in on specific stories, specific characters, because that's how we as individuals and as stakeholders and as humans really can process information in our brains. I think the stat is that like if it's a number past like 60 or something like that, your brain stops being able to like fundamentally process what that is. So you really need to hone in on more specificity.
It's interesting what you're saying, because one of the things that we teach in our workshops is to salespeople is go ahead and identify the 3, 5, 10 differentiators that you have, and then let's attach a story to those. Because it's one thing, when I was a sports agent, it's one thing to tell a guy, look, we're going to work really, really hard for you. And it's another thing to tell him a story about a time that we did that, right? With a real athlete. So I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's incredibly powerful and impactful for business leaders, whether it's finding somebody inside that can tell it and help you tell it, or when we're selling. One of the things that came up for me when obviously I'm a fan of SoulPancake and what the work that you guys do, is gratitude is a theme that seems to be reoccurring, right, with all your video content. Are there some simple practices around gratitude that you've seen work? You talk a lot about joy too. What are some of those little nuggets that people can take away and deploy immediately in their lives to help be more joyful, maybe have more gratitude?
Yeah. So because our mission, this underlying mission that we have, is about elevating kind of the human experience and doing that through the lens of positivity, upliftment, inspiration, and joy, a lot of times people will ask us, so what are the ways that you can be more joyful? What are the ways that you can bring more happiness into your life? And so we talk a lot about that, and a lot of the content that we've made, we've been able to glean and learn lessons out of that. One of the people that I point to and talk a lot about, and I'll get to how gratitude fits into this, is Dr. Martin Seligman. So Dr. Martin Seligman is actually the founder of positive psychology. Most psychology, most of psychology, the field of psychology, is about kind of what's wrong with us. And what he talks a lot about is, okay, but there's a lot of people who they've got a lot going right with them. And so what are they doing right? What are they doing that is, or what's going right in their brain that is causing them to react positively, to have grit, to be able to be resilient, to have more joyful kind of perspective. They aren't the ones that are going to therapy saying what's wrong with me and what's broken inside of me. They're the ones that are living life in a really positive way, and they're very adaptable. So he did a lot of studying around what are the qualities that contribute to that. And so the things that he found are very simple. He found that, compassion and showing compassion and care to others has a strong contributing element to your internal state of happiness. he found that acts of service, small acts of service, not big acts of service, not quitting your job and traveling to, Bangladesh to, save a village,
Right.
not that kind of service, but really truly small acts of service, buying a cup of coffee for someone else, helping someone with groceries, unpack groceries, little acts of service that are done on a daily basis. Those things can really contribute to your happiness level if you do like small acts of service every day. And the third thing that he talked a lot about was gratitude. And we've seen that across the board in both some of our most high performing videos, as well as in some of the more scientifically based content that we've created, that gratitude really resonates with people. And so the things that we found that are very specific acts of gratitude that people can do, we had a video that went viral called Science of Happiness and Experiment in Gratitude. And what that was we brought in a group of people. We had them think about and visualize a person that had had a strong influence on their life. And we asked them to write a letter to this person. And then at the end of writing the letter, unbeknownst to them, right? So we kind of caught them off guard. We told them, okay, we're going to now pick up the phone and call this person, and you're going to read this letter to them on the spot. And so obviously they were caught off guard. It was super entertaining to like watch them fidget and be like, oh, that's going to make me super uncomfortable and awkward. But the result is that expressing the gratitude actually saw a real lift in their happiness levels. So there's lots of folks who will say, "Oh, write down what you're grateful for." Right? Write a letter to someone, or
Sure.
write down things that you're grateful for. But what Martin Seligman found out, and what our videos have actually shown, is that expressing that gratitude can actually have a bigger impact on yourself than just writing it down. So if you're having a particularly tough day, not only do you want to write down, something about a person you're grateful for in your life, but actually picking up the phone or sitting down over coffee and just being like, hey, I don't want anything. I wasn't really calling to like chat or ask you for anything, but I really just wanted to tell you that you matter in my life. And I'm grateful that you're in my life because of these 3 reasons, that can actually significantly increase your happiness. So getting in the regular practice of expressing gratitude is something that can be a strong contributor to your happiness levels. And then obviously, finding small things to be grateful for. Oftentimes I think people think, oh, well, I'm single and I haven't been able to buy a house and I just got laid off, and all the big things in my life are not working out the way I wanted. And so it's really hard for me to find things to be grateful for. But a lot of the science and research says to focus in on really small things, that I'm really grateful that I've got clean water to drink. I'm really grateful that I've got my health. I'm really grateful that I am wearing jeans that make me feel like I look really good in the mirror, right? Like focusing in on small things, especially when the big things seem like they're not working, can actually be very impactful from a gratefulness perspective. And finding those little things every day can really help shift and strengthen, frankly, the synapses in your brain that allow you to react positively to things.
Have failed negotiations or missed opportunities to negotiate ever cost you money, time, resources, or relationships? So you aren't alone. 86% of people say they want to learn how to negotiate more effectively. That's why I am so excited to announce our public Game Changer Negotiation Training Workshop taking place in Atlanta, November 28th. During the workshop, you'll learn proven tools and a framework to navigate negotiations to get better outcomes. Participants learn tactics to negotiate with all kinds of different personalities. They learn a tool we teach called the E-Walk, used to prepare for any negotiation. Of course, the 10 best practices to negotiate and simulated negotiations are occurring all throughout the day. Attendees leave with our continuous engagement package to begin to put this framework to work immediately. Our promise to you is simple: close better deals faster and strengthen your relationships. We only have 30 seats available, so make your reservation today. Visit GameChanger360.com for details. See you in Atlanta. I think this is so cool. I mean, compassion, service, and gratitude, and being excited about grateful for a cup of coffee and how yummy it is in the morning, or whatever it might be. And it's the little stuff, which I love. let me ask you this. How, like, if I'm a business leader and I'm listening, I'm like, hey, look, you guys are living in a fairyland. This all sounds amazing, but I got to increase my margins. I got to get my people executing. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm not hitting my numbers this month. How does joy, gratitude, service? I mean, if I'm a salesperson listening, or if I'm a leader listening, or if I'm somebody that's continuing to really push in my career to advance, how does this show up as a way in which I can continue to grow and serve and evolve as a leader or as an emerging leader, salesperson, whatever it might be?
Of course. So a couple things on that. I think there's often a misconception that the type of happiness and joy that we're talking about is an emotion, right? And the reality is that feelings are fleeting. So one second you can be happy, you can be angry, you can be sad, you can be frustrated. You have that delicious cup of coffee and you're happy for like 5 minutes, but then you're facing your, shrinking margins, right? And you're like,
no, I'm
right? And
right,
you're like, oh,
right.
I'm facing shrinking margins. Like I'm no longer happy, right? And what we're talking about is not the fleeting feeling of happiness and joy. What we're talking about is your internal state, the way that your brain responds to and reacts to things, right? So if you think about whenever you're faced with a big challenge at work, if you come at it from a very negative perspective, if you're unhappy, if you're not able to think kind of from a positive perspective, oftentimes your problem solving is actually impacted and it's affected. That you are unable to kind of think clearly. Your judgment is often more clouded because you're coming at it from a negative perspective. But if you can actually shift your internal way of perceiving things to, okay, what are the positive things that I can focus in on? What are the signs of light that are coming out in the really difficult, financial report I just got? Like, where are our pockets of positivity? Like, what can I focus in on to shine a light on to really kind of inspire people to say, okay, here are the places that we're not hitting our numbers. Here are the challenges we're having. Here are the ways we need to step it up. But here's where we did have a pocket of light, and let's see if we can like extract from that where we can learn, where we can advance. And on this other stuff, okay, let's come at it from a clear mind, from a positive heart, and let's say, okay, how can we tackle these challenges in a way that is solutions oriented, that we've got clear thinking around problem solving, and not a, ugh, this sucks, this is the worst, I'm going to get fired mentality, which actually doesn't result in the most clear thinking around problem solving. So I think it's really just about perception and responsiveness, and how kind of coming at things from a state of joy is not about the feeling that you're feeling in the moment. It's about how you choose to respond and solve the problems in the moment.
So, I mean, over time, as people behave with, for example, more service, more compassion, more gratitude on a daily basis, I'm hearing you say that in a short period of time, potentially, they have an employee that walks into their office and it's going to be a tough conversation, that the way in which they might approach that probably could be a little bit healthier and drive connection with that person versus maybe pushing them away because they're not handling it with joy, gratitude, et cetera. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes. So my philosophy is that there's never a reason to not be kind. You can still be direct. You can still be blunt. You can still tell people that they're not delivering or they're not performing, but you can do it with kindness and compassion. And that the best leaders, and I think the leaders that have the most loyalty and the leaders that are able to inspire true change, are able to communicate things in a way that is not unkind. And I think that long term, not only will you as an individual leader be happier and more and really truly able to frankly live with yourself and the type of life and leader that you are, you will be happier. But not only that, but I think you will generate more loyalty amongst your teams if you deal people with a kind and compassionate way. And again, this does not shy away from the hard stuff. It does not mean that you do not have very frank conversations with your salespeople about not hitting their numbers, with your plant managers about improving your margins. Like, you have to have those hard conversations, and they will be hard conversations. And sometimes you have to lay people off, and sometimes you have to fire non-performers. All of those things, you're not shying away from those. You are just doing them with as much kindness and compassion as you can.
Got it. With some love. And what have you learned, talking about difficult conversations, right? What have you learned about how to have difficult conversations and tackle tough topics? You've done a lot of that on SoulPancake in the work that you've done personally, you do that. What have you learned about that? And what advice would you have for people on how to do it and how to do it well?
I think that all difficult conversations essentially boil back down to the fact that you're having them with other humans.
Sure. Right. Don't forget that.
At the end of the day, you're not having a conversation in a vacuum with a sales chart. You're not having that conversation with a piece of machinery, right? You're having the difficult conversations with another human. And so recognizing that this is a human being with their own feelings, their own things that might be happening that you are unaware of that are impacting their lives, other things that they're thinking about, other priorities, other challenges, things you may not know about them. These are our complex human beings with complex emotions and feelings. I think that is the thing that I've learned more than anything is that difficult conversations, just know that you're having it with another human, right? And how you would want to be spoken to, how you would want to be interacted with, how you would want someone to directly tell you that something is not working and that you need solutions, but to not make it about you as a person, but to make it about the difficult situation is really the best way to approach conversations. Anytime you're getting into a situation where you're saying you're not delivering, you are failing, and directing it at the human, you're failing to recognize that person as a human. It's, hey, we are in this together. We're not delivering on numbers. We need to focus on other solutions. What are some of the things you can bring to the table to solve the problem? What are your recommendations for doing that? Where can we improve XYZ process? And inviting people into the solutions as opposed to making it about pointing out the flaws of the human, I think is where you see the best progress, I think, in terms of problem solving. Now, if you're firing someone because they're not a performer, then I think you just do that with as much kindness as compassion as possible. It's not working out. I wish it were. This has nothing to do with you as a person. You're lovely and a great human. You're just not the right fit for this role, right? And to do that with as much kindness as compassion is the best way to do that.
When you think about the content that you guys put out and the work that you do, how do you measure success when it comes to the content you produce? I mean, is it the number of people that view it, how viral it goes? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so we have a lot of different metrics that we use. Data is really important in looking at performance. So the data that we've used and the metrics that we've used have changed over time. So while at one point most of the platforms, or at least the social platforms, were rewarding views, we obviously were driving as much as we could viewership, and view numbers were the driver of success. Now, if you look at some platforms, they're rewarding watch time. How much time is being spent watching something? So if we have a piece of content that had someone staying on the platform watching our content for, 20, 30, 40 minutes, then that might be for that platform a success metric. If this content is sticky enough that someone is watching it for a long period of time and staying within our space for a long period of time. Other platforms reward engagement, right? So what percentage of the views, you might only get, 100,000 views on something, not a million, but did you have a really high percentage of likes, shares, comments on that 100,000 views? So was it a highly engaged piece of content? Did you have, 20% of the viewers actually engaged with the content in some way? That's a super high engagement rate. So that might be a success metric on certain platforms. So it really kind of depends on the platform. It depends on the algorithm. It depends on what the metric is, kind of externally that you're measuring success against. And then internally, we have other metrics. So what is the cost per subscriber for making a piece of content? What is the cost per view for making a piece of content? What is the cost per engagement? So it really depends kind of internally how we measure success versus externally. And a lot of that is driven by the platforms and the algorithms.
Sure. What's one of the favorite projects you've worked on?
Yeah, I mean, I have so many favorites.
I bet.
It's hard to pick one. But I think, recently we did a project with Sprint that was around their 1 million project. So they have a new initiative where they're trying to close the homework gap. So 70% of teachers assign homework to be completed online. And yet there's 5 million households in the United States with school-age children that don't actually have Wi-Fi at home. They can't afford it. They're in lower socioeconomic brackets. And so the kids can't do their homework, or they have to go to a Starbucks or a library, which often closes, requires transportation that they may not have. So it really kind of creates a gap in achievement. And Sprint really believes that Wi-Fi access is universal. Like it should be a universal right, access to information and the internet. And so they're trying to close that homework gap And so they've launched this project called the 1 Million Project. And one of the challenges they were finding is that they had a hard time explaining to people why this is important and why this matters. So they came to SoulPancake to say, hey, can you create a video that actually illustrates this problem in a way that will resonate with people and that people will understand? And so we made a video where we essentially had two groups of teens competing against each other through like a trivia game. And in round one, they just have to answer the questions based on their own knowledge. But in round two, half the one team is given laptops and the other team is given just textbooks, and they don't see each other. So obviously the kids who have access to the internet are firing away answers so much more rapidly than the other team. So where they were level up until then, the gap in their scores essentially like catapults.
Wow.
And so when we reveal that one team has laptops and the other team is just like, what the heck? That's so unfair. It's like there's no way we could have ever gotten ahead. And so, obviously the parents are watching, kids are like, there's a lot of crying, like it's so unfair that kids don't have access to this. Like I can't even imagine how my kid could have done their homework without this. So we really illustrate through kind of a social experiment the problem. And so that video ended up getting, 30 million views and really kind of raised awareness for what Sprint is doing and frankly, what this problem is in education that a lot of people don't realize is an issue. And so I think that was a really successful kind of collaboration with a brand that helped to kind of elevate awareness around an issue.
So what do you think is next when we look at media today and we just see so much, relentless focus, right, on negativity, this divisiveness? What goes through your mind when you see this? What's SoulPancake's kind of role in this, which seems obvious, but tell me a little bit about get me inside of the office there when you guys talk about this issue and challenge and the work that you do.
Well, I think there is a lot of negative stuff out there, and there is a lot of stuff that breaks your heart and hurts you as a human and is hard to take in and is hard to process. And I think what we internally talk a lot about is that our responsibility as a company is to be the light in the darkness, to give people hope when they might not otherwise feel that there is hope, and to tell stories that uplift them and show them that humans are capable of great good, so that when they are seeing the great evils and the great hurts that are happening in the world, that they can also know that there is also great good and a great capacity for good amongst humans. And so those are the kinds of stories that we try to tell. Sometimes we tell them through the lens of topics that are difficult, whether that is gun control or that is immigration. We don't talk about the political side of it. We don't talk about the issue. We really just try to tell really human stories, really positive and uplifting stories of the good that people are doing despite the negative conversation.
That's awesome. So needed. What's next for SoulPancake?
Yeah, so we have a lot of awesome projects in the works. We are going to be rolling out in the fall some amazing content about foster care and foster families. We'll have some content around gender empowerment in partnership with our parent company, Participant Media. So we'll be doing a lot of content around kind of women in the workplace, gender equity, the kind of gaps in identity around women that we'll be doing in the fall. We'll also have a bunch of content coming out around biases, some around race, some around hiring, some around kind of the assumptions we make about people. So we've got a lot of interesting content lined up for the fall. And then we also are going to be doing a second round of events in the fall in the Southern California area as we prepare for a 2019 SoulPancake Live touring event that we're going to be rolling out. So we've got a lot of really fun things in the work for the fall.
So we end every podcast with sort of a rapid fire section. So I'm going to fire off some questions to you and you just fire back what comes up. Sound good?
Awesome. Let's do it.
Morning person or night owl?
Night owl.
Okay. First job?
I was cleaning pools at the Lakewood Community Center.
Nice. All right, girl. Last book you read?
Little Fires Everywhere.
Okay. What's your favorite book?
Oh, Pride and Prejudice. I read it every summer. I know it's nutty.
What advice would you give your younger self?
Not to take myself so seriously.
Okay. Yeah. Lastly, what brings you the greatest joy? What brings you the greatest joy?
My family, particularly my mom, spending time with my mom.
This show is called Game Changers. So my last question is who's a game changer that inspires you and why? And this is a particularly fun question to ask you candidly because you hear so many incredible stories.
Oh God, there are so many people. That's such a hard question to pick one person who's a game changer. I think there's a lot of different game changers on a lot of different fields. I think that make me pick one person because like my mind immediately goes to like, I think that Drake is a game changer in the music industry. I think that Elon Musk is a game changer in the race to space. And
Sure.
I have a really good friend named Matteo Jaramillo who worked at Tesla on their battery division, and he's inventing a new battery that I think is going to save the environment. So I think there's a ton of amazing game changers out there. It's just about kind of what area are they really changing the game in?
I agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more. I think there are game changers in every single category and every single field. And that's why we love this show, right? And we've been able to pull in, and you are, and the work that you guys are doing at SoulPancake is just so needed and so appreciated. And we believe you guys are as well. And so thank you for what you do. Thank you for how you do it. And I'm so excited for the things that are continuing in the pipe with you guys and just the best as you continue to grow.
Well, thank you. I genuinely appreciate that. I'm flattered and humbled given that you talk to a lot of amazing people as well, that you see SoulPancake in that light. And it was a pleasure to chat with you.
Thanks, as always, for listening to Game Changers with Molly Fletcher. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts. There you can listen to previous episodes and leave us a review, which helps other people find out about the show. For more about me, visit mollyfletcher.com. Until next time, stay curious and be bold.